19-year-old trapper stands beside a shallow grave. Inside it lies a man so badly mauled by a grizzly bear that no one expects him to survive the night. The boy takes the man's rifle, his knife, his last chance of survival. Then he walks away. The man in the grave is Hugh Glass. The boy is Jim Bridger. And over the next 50 years, that same boy will become one of the most famous explorers in the American West. The question isn't whether Hugh Glass survived. It's how a decision like this fits into the life of the man who made it. Jim Bridger was born March 17, 1804, in Richmond, Virginia. He didn't get much of a childhood. His mother died when he was 12. His father died a year later. An aunt took him in and brought him to St. Louis, where she put him to work. 5 years at a blacksmith's forge, bending iron with his hands while his letters and numbers went untaught. He would live the rest of his life unable to read or write. In 1822, William Ashley put out a call across the frontier for enterprising young men, willing to head up the Missouri River into country almost nobody from the United States had mapped. Bridger answered. He was somewhere between 17 and 19. The records don't agree, which tells you something about how little anyone was tracking this particular blacksmith's apprentice before he made himself useful with a rifle instead of a hammer. He spent his first year on the upper Missouri under Major Andrew Henry, until Blackfoot hostility forced the expedition back downriver in the spring of 1823. 5 months later, he's back upriver again. And this time, the danger that finds the party isn't human. In August of 1823, deep in Arikara country along the Grand River, one of the party's hunters is mauled by a grizzly bear almost beyond recognition. His name is Hugh Glass. He's roughly 40, twice Bridger's age, and by every expectation of the men around him, he should already be dead. He isn't, and that creates a problem. The party can't carry him. They can't risk staying still. Arikara warriors had killed 14 of their own only 2 months earlier in this same stretch of country. Major Henry offers a reward to any man willing to stay behind with Glass until he either recovers or finally dies, so someone can at least bury him properly. 2 men take the offer. One is John Fitzgerald, older, more experienced, the one some accounts say eventually talks the other into leaving. The other is Jim Bridger, 19 years old, 5 years removed from a blacksmith's forge, now standing over a half-dead man with a decision in front of him that no one his age should have to make alone. Here, history gets quieter than the legend would like. No surviving record from 1823 names the 2 men who stayed with Glass. The earliest accounts, written within a few years of the event, don't mention Bridger or Fitzgerald at all. The name doesn't surface until 1839, 16 years later, in an account describing a young trapper called Bridges. It's almost certainly him. But it's worth saying plainly, the link between Jim Bridger and this moment rests on a name written down a decade and a half after the fact, not on anything recorded at the time. What the accounts do agree on is what happened. After several days of waiting, with Glass still alive and the threat of Arikara warriors still hanging over the camp, the 2 men make their choice. They take his rifle, his knife, his shot pouch, every tool that might have given a wounded man any chance at all. They dig a shallow grave, lay him in it, and walk away, believing, as far as anyone can tell, that they're leaving a corpse behind rather than abandoning a living man. There's no record of what Bridger said in that moment. No journal entry, no letter, no quote handed down by a witness. Whatever he felt walking away from that riverbank, he carried it without ever putting it into words that survive him. Bridger doesn't go back. The expedition moves on. By that fall, he's trapping in the Bighorn region with John Weber's brigade, as if the man on the Grand River had already become history. Except Glass doesn't die. He crawls. He survives 6 weeks alone in the wilderness and reaches Fort Kiowa that October. And once his body has healed enough to move, he does something almost no one expects. He goes looking for the 2 men who left him. Over the following months, Glass crosses nearly 1,700 miles of frontier hunting down Fitzgerald and Bridger, surviving 3 more Arikara attacks along the way, Watching 9 other men die in skirmishes he walks away from. He finds Bridger first, somewhere in Montana. There's no transcript of that meeting. No one wrote down what either man said when they finally stood face to face again. What survives is only the outcome. Glass looks at the boy in front of him, still only 19, and forgives him. Multiple accounts repeat this. None are contemporary to 1823 or 24, but separated by years and by authors, they all agree on the same shape. Age spared him. Not innocence, not apology, just the plain fact that he'd been a teenager when he made the choice, and the man he'd nearly killed by inaction decided that mattered enough to let it go. Bridger never speaks of it on record. Not regret, not justification. Not once, in the 58 years that follow, does he leave behind a single sentence about the morning he left Hugh Glass in a hole in the ground. What he does instead is build a life almost too large to summarize, and somewhere in the middle of building it, the boy who knelt on the Grand River starts becoming the man people will eventually call a legend. The two versions of him moving forward side by side without ever quite meeting on paper. By the winter of 1824, he's pushed west across South Pass, into country few American men have set foot in. A dispute breaks out among the trappers over where the Bear River actually runs, and Bridger is the one sent to find out. He follows it to a vast, shimmering lake so salty, he assumes at first has reached an arm of the Pacific. For years he's remembered as the man who found the Great Salt Lake, though later research suggests another trapper, Etienne Provost, may have gotten there first. Bridger gets the credit anyway, for a long time. A year later, in 1825, he leaves a fur-trading expedition mid-journey and enters the Bighorn Canyon alone, on a raft he builds out of driftwood. No one has run that stretch of river before. He comes out the other side unscathed, the first recorded man to do it. By 1830, he's a partner in his own outfit, the Rocky Mountain Fur Company. That same year, he becomes one of the first Americans to lay eyes on the geysers and boiling lake of what will eventually become Yellowstone National Park. Almost nobody believes him. His reports get written off as another tall tale from a man already known for stretching the truth around a campfire. It will take decades, and other men's expeditions, before the world catches up to what he saw. In 1843, he builds a trading post on the Green River and names it after himself, Fort Bridger. It becomes one of the most important waypoints on the Trail West, supplying and guiding thousands of emigrants, including the Donna Reed Party, whose journey will end in catastrophe through no fault of his. He's nearing 40 now, close to the age Hugh Glass had been on that riverbank 20 years earlier. On paper, the man whose name now sits over a gate in the wilderness is nothing but a trader and a guide. The other version of him, the one from 1823, still has no paper trail at all. In 1847, Brigham Young's Mormon pioneers reach his post. Bridger sits with Young and draws him a map of the Salt Lake Valley by hand, warning him, correctly, that the soil might not support the kind of farming the Mormons are hoping for. Within a decade, that relationship sours completely. Mormon leaders accuse him of arming local tribes, revoke his trading license, and send an armed posse after him. He's gone before they arrive. In 1855, he sells the fort to them anyway, for $8,000. 2 years later, the Mormons burn it down to slow a US Army column, a column Bridger himself has been hired to guide. In 1859, the Army sends him out to help map the Yellowstone and Missouri River country properly. In 1864, at 60 years old, he blazes a new wagon route to the Montana goldfields, keeping 10 wagon trains clear of hostile territory. 2 years later, he's scouting for the Army again, warning a fort commander about an incoming attack from Red Cloud's forces before the Fetterman fight. The commander is under orders to fire him. Instead, he doubles his pay. By 1867, his eyesight is failing badly enough to end it. He returns to Missouri, to a small farm outside Kansas City, and fades out of the story he spent 45 years writing, never once adding, in all that time, a single word about how it started. Jim Bridger dies in 1881, at 77, an extraordinary lifespan for a man of the frontier, where most didn't see 50. He dies penniless, remembered by a handful of old friends, in a country that has mostly stopped needing what he knew how to do. It would be easy to tell this as two separate men, the boy who left Hugh Glass for dead on a riverbank and the legend who mapped half the American West. But that separation doesn't really hold up. It's the same person, carrying the same life forward, one decision at a time, for 45 more years after the worst one. There's no record of Bridger ever explaining himself. No confession, no defense, no campfire story about the morning he walked away from a dying man. Maybe that silence is its own kind of answer. Or maybe some decisions just don't come with the right words attached, and all that's left to do with them is keep moving, the same way Glass himself had no choice but to crawl. Whatever he carried away from that river bank in 1823, he spent the rest of his life walking it off.